Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the 2016 year of my Xbox One Retrospective. This is the last year until we are completely caught up with Xbox, at least until next month. So yeah, let's get right into it. Again, another slow year for Xbox exclusives. If you haven't seen my retrospectives before, I go through a console's exclusives year by year. I'm going to get to multi-platform stuff too. Actually, I have a couple of those filmed, but they're from quite a while ago, so quality may not be as good, but we're going to get those up soon. And yeah, let's get into 2016 for Xbox. Starting off with a pretty big exclusive for the console that may not have been as well received as it was hyped, but definitely a game worth checking out still, and that is Quantum Break. This was Remedy's next big game after Alan Wake, which didn't kill it in sales and sadly suffered the same fate. It's a third-person shooter where the story and gameplay revolve around time travel. The game stars Jack Joyce, who gets wrapped up in a conflict between his brother and the Monarch Corporation, which he helped found, and they both develop time machines, and it ends up causing a break in time that threatens the world. Jack ends up getting time manipulation powers and is constantly pursued by the corporation while he tries to figure out how to set things right. The time stuff works into gameplay, allowing Jack to slow time around enemies, causing them to move slower, or speed up time for him so he can do quick takedowns or dart between cover, or stop time around him to keep bullets from hitting him. A big part of the game is the episodic nature, where between chapters of the game you watch video clips that are about 20 minutes, basically episodes, showing you what your enemies are doing. Choices you make in the game are reflected in these episodes, so you can see the results of your choices a bit. Like Alan Wake, there are ties in the story for sequels, but Remedy's already moved on. Overall, the game is a bit janky, but still deserves more credit than it gets as a good third-person shooter with an interesting story. Next up is a game that's probably going to end up on the multi-platform list as well, but it deserves special mention here. That is Dead Island: The Definitive Edition. This collection includes Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide, and the pixel art side-scrolling game Dead Island Retro Rampage. Dead Island and Riptide were updated to use the same engine from the developer's later game, Dying Light, and while it's not that much of a jump, the performance is better than the last-gen versions. Given that the frame rate issues were the biggest complaints about the original game, I'm glad for the update. Now, this was released physically for PS4, but the reason I'm including it here is because the PS4 version does not have Riptide on disc. So this is the only physical release of the definitive version of Dead Island Riptide. Next up, a game I recommend everybody who has an Xbox One check out. That is Ori and the Blind Forest, the Definitive Edition. Ori and the Blind Forest is a beautiful and difficult Metroidvania platformer that was a digital Xbox One exclusive last year, and I think I missed it in the 2015 retrospective, so I'll cover it more thoroughly here. The original game has you controlling the guardian spirit Ori, who leaves his adoptive forest home when his mother figure dies and ends up on a journey to restore life to the dead area, and take down the monster terrorizing the forest. Gameplay is a 2D platformer where you continually get new skills and abilities that allow you to progress further. Abilities include double jumps, wall jumps, glides, stomps, wall climbing, and more. You attack with your spirit orbs for some pretty unique combat in these kinds of games, and you can unlock stronger and more consecutive attacks through the upgrade tree by collecting experience from defeating enemies. This definitive edition includes a new area, 2 new abilities, easy and hard difficulty modes, and fast travel options. The original game may have turned off some fans with its difficulty and some frustrating design elements, but if you own an Xbox One, you have to check out this version. It does away with any reason not to. If you don't like hard games, the easy mode makes it manageable, and that's the first way I played it, so I recommend that. Next up, let's talk a bit about the hardware update this year, the Xbox One S. Now, Sony had released the PS4 Pro, and the Xbox One X is still a while off being a much superior machine. So in the meantime, they put out the Xbox One S, which is actually a really good update. It doesn't have all the power that the X would have, but it also is slimmer. It's got a 4K Blu-ray player in it, something the PS4 Pro doesn't have. It doesn't run games in native 4K, but it does output 4K and HDR. That allows for some better image quality and 4K streaming. The original Kinect didn't work with it. You had to get an adapter, which I'm not sure how you got it at the time. Now I know it's super expensive, so that's a bit of a shame for people who want to use their Kinects on newer machines. But yeah, that was a big change there. Next up, another entry in what I think may be the best racing series going on right now. That is Forza Horizon 3. So I'm not a big fan of racing games, but if I want to play any racing game, the Horizon series is my go-to this gen. The open world driving sim takes place in Australia now with varied environments and a map that's twice as big as Horizon 2. Aside from the main campaign and the online competitive modes, there's also a new 4-player co-op campaign. Events include races, time trials, and bucket list challenges. This time though, the game puts the player in charge of the Horizon Festival. As its director, you can build your own racing team, expand locations to add events and customize challenges. The game launched with 350 cars, including bar finds, which unlock as players find cars based on rumors presented in the game. Post-DLC included cars, the Blizzard Mountain area, a Hot Wheels pack including a new coastal area, and for fans of Final Fantasy, the Regalia car from Final Fantasy 15. Next up, a game I don't have because I updated to the better edition. This is ReCore, a third-person action-adventure game by Concept and the developers of Metroid Prime 3 and Mega Man X Maverick Hunter, which seemed promising. The game stars Joel, who awakens on a terraformed colony, Far Eden, only to find herself alone in the world not populated like she expected. Joel can double jump and boost dash for quick fun traversal mechanics. The platforming is surprisingly good in the game. For combat, she's equipped with a rifle that can shoot streams of bullets or bigger charge shots. The player can switch between 3 types of ammo to exploit enemy weaknesses. She's also joined by her 3 robot companions who assist in combat and puzzle solving. The player can upgrade them with new parts and swap out their cores to change their abilities, which is a big part of the game. While ReCore had a ton of potential and a strong early game, the original release was apparently full of technical issues, repetitive gameplay, and a lack of content. In 2017, a free update was released which fixed many of those issues and make the game worth checking out, so if you avoided it based on the initial reviews, I suggest giving it another look. Next up, the return of a big franchise for Microsoft, Gears of War 4. After the mediocre Judgment, Gears of War returns for this generation with a new set of characters, new weapons, and new enemies. The game stars Marcus Phoenix's son, JD, who is part of a group of scavengers rebelling against the new coalition when they uncover a new threat to humanity. The gameplay is mostly the same, but instead of locusts, you're going up against robots and new creatures called the Swarm. The welcome new enemies change up the feel of the gameplay a bit from the previous titles, and the new weapons are all fun. There's also some new weather effects to tie into the story, which itself is interesting and a decent follow-up to the original trilogy. The multiplayer modes, including Horde and co-op campaign play, return as well. If you didn't quite see it coming, with the Xbox One S information, Microsoft announced on October 25, 2016 that the Kinect 2.0 is officially discontinued. Those adapters were already really expensive and hard to get at this point, so it's a shame for people who wanted to pick one up when they heard that, but yeah, pretty much done. They just dropped it altogether. Which brings us to the last notable physical exclusive of the year, Dead Rising 4. The latest game in the open-world action-adventure series sees the return of the first game's protagonist, Frank West, who's undergone a bit of a personality change and ends up in the middle of a new zombie outbreak. This time it's set in a town where an outbreak happened around Christmas time, so it's completely Christmas-themed. To get around the zombies, Frank must use all his photography, combat, and crafting experience. The story is lighter and more fun here than 3's more serious take on the series, but it ends in a cliffhanger that's resolved in DLC. Gameplay-wise, weapon and vehicle crafting return, the mission structure is about the same, and the game's time limits are generous compared to the previous games, though there is a hardcore mode for fans of the originals. The one big complaint I have about the game is that the psychopath bosses are just reduced to generic characters now. There's no interesting characters or build up to them, no fun cutscenes, and they're pretty easy compared to the previous games where they were tough optional challenges comprised of fun, crazy characters. So that's a real letdown. But other than that, it's a good Dead Rising game and worth checking out. This was only a timed exclusive and did come to the PS4 next year, but this is a series that started here, so I like to play it here. And that's it for the physical exclusives for 2016, but like I like to do with Xbox, I'm going to go through the digital exclusives as well because there's so few notable digital exclusives. So let's get started with Oxenfree. This was a timed digital exclusive and a neat 2D narrative adventure game by a new team founded by ex-Telltale employees. In the game, a group of kids unleash a supernatural force on their home island. The player controls girl Alex and moves around the island completing objectives, trying to reunite her friends and figure out what's going on and how to stop it. Dialogue options and decisions are a big part of the game, and overall it's a great story with fun characters and multiple endings. So now it's been released on other consoles and I do recommend checking it out. It's a really fun kind of adventure game. Following that was Elite Dangerous Arena. The standalone PvP companion for Elite Dangerous was an Xbox One console exclusive for a time, but it's since been removed from the Xbox Store and just added into the main game as a PvP mode. And lastly, the Turing Test was a timed console exclusive for 2016. This first-person exploration puzzle game has the player controlling Ava Turing aboard a space station orbiting one of Jupiter's moons. Puzzles involve collecting power-up orbs and using them to unlock new areas and power up machines and robots to help progress through the stations. So yeah, a bit of a letdown for digital exclusives this year. All of them that were notable were timed exclusives, unless I missed something big. But I know some decent physical exclusives this year. Still not quite comparing to Sony's output. It's a shame because it's such a good console. And 2017 isn't much better, but Microsoft has promised 18 will be, so we'll see about that. Thanks for checking out my retrospective. Check out all my other retrospectives. I do a ton of this stuff, so please subscribe and stay tuned for that. I know it's been a little while since I've had a retrospective up, but now I'm going to get going on them and continue the series that I was in the middle of. So yeah, thanks for checking this out. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.